Shall we start again, Vandana? Yeah. I think, you brought in changes in your teacher education program and also systematically or systemically also in the university, in your department. So, you would like to share some of the struggles that you had, or you talked about working in groups, collaboration, and the energy that gave you and the team. Some struggles that you had to face, if any.
No, of course. See, in a bigger system, there would always be disagreements. When disagreements are kind of combined with hegemonic positions, they can be struggles for the other people. So we did face, I did face, disagreements, and there is this idea, that if somebody is coming in and if you're young and I joined at the age of 27 when I was 27. So that's why I'm calling it young all the time, otherwise not otherwise. So there was this idea that you're over enthusiastic, and then you're getting into too many places, and probably you don't understand what working in the institution is like. You're still putting yourself in a student's frame of reference where a student's doing 10 things at a time in a day. So this is not how a university professor is supposed to be working and stuff like that. So once there was those kind of, sermons which would often come from the seniors, and
The culture of the place in a sense.
culture of that place, yeah, there is always this fear that probably the culture of the place will be, we have taken so long to establish a culture, institutional ethos, and somebody,
New generation.
yeah, somebody dropping in will just spoil that up, things like, there were things like you laugh too loudly. I still don't know how do I control it, because I do laugh very loudly. And then you laugh with students. So when you laugh loudly, then you laugh with your students. And they were the point, which kind of came up, and the way in which they came up, I think that was more problematic. And in the beginning, I didn't know how to deal with these, because I never expected these kind of, I thought, I would be scrutinized for what I know, kind of assignments I give in the classroom, and those kind of stuff. I never thought I'd be scrutinized for the way I speak or laugh or dress, or things like that. And this laughter pass was an amazing one, when somebody just came in and the ex-person said, no, I am happy.
No, they should be happy to hear laughter in the class.
Absolutely, absolutely. Recently, what happened is that one of the colleagues came up and they said, I was looking for you. I said, how do you know I'm here? I said, I heard your laughter in the department, and I thought Vandana is somewhere, I got to go and locate this lady, which I just came back from my fellowship and all that. So, now that it has become a part of your personality, it was a part of personality at that point also. But when you're talking about struggles, struggles have been those minute kind of a thing, that, I remember being an IDEC, which we had in 2018. And there was this boy who was saying, so I remember that Delhi University culture, he really used to make a lot of fun about that. He said, you're wearing a tussar sari with a border and a shawl over here. So, and if you don't do that, you don't look like, those kind of things. So I didn't have a tussar sari to begin with, and then, work on with that. So, you're scrutinized for what you're wearing, probably, and things like that. So those were one kind of struggle, which we had. But when we come to the academic part of it, see, there were struggles in the sense that if you were trying to propose a course, it has to go through a system. The system of, there's a sequence of events. It will go to council, staff council, then, then my committee of courses. There's a whole process, faculty of education, then it go to academic council, and because we are in a system again. So there were kind of resistance about whether this course could be allowed, because there were kind of scrutinies at different levels. But so that was one part of it. But the good part of it is the institutional practice by itself. The institution by itself has a lot of provision for people who want to launch a new course, who want to present a different perspective to a kind of thought which is being discussed in the classroom. So that practice came as a savior for people like me, wherein I could just come up, I could say, I just don't want to talk about special education, I want to talk about diversity and education. I want to talk about inclusive education. So how from this whole idea of moving from special education to inclusive education, to diversity and inclusion, to diversity, inclusion and pedagogy, that has been a kind of, journey. We could do that because there are institutional provisions for us to launch new courses. That is, this kind of flexibility is there. There were struggles in the sense that different forums, people don't like that you're thinking something different, and you find that kind of a resistance. But if there was resistance, there was support also. That is how it could go through all the forums, So I would not say that it was a smooth journey, but I would say that it was made possible because we had a rationale to do it. Like I had a rationale to do it, if I look at myself. And there were people who found, who supported that rationale and they moved on. So probably, it had those kind of support systems where it went through,
And you don't really have to bend the rules to make things happen.
Absolutely.
And nobody's stopping you to make those qualitative kind of change.
Absolutely so. So I think the resistance was more to the idea, and but then when we were able to justify it, when we were able to justify the idea, then there were less resistance and more curiosity. That how you are going to bring this idea to a 100 marks course now, because ideas are like one-liners, ek baar bol diya, one line, it's done kind of a stuff. So that was a curiosity, that how would you convert an idea into a course and then to a practice. And there I think the students came as the kind of representatives of how things unfold, the kind of pedagogies that we hold in the classroom, especially for MEd and MPhil program. MPhil we have discontinued from the UGC directives now, so MPhil is not done anymore. But before going for my fellowship, I did have an MPhil course to teach, which we are not continuing as a part of PhD coursework, which is different. So these students, they brought in a lot of energy into the classroom, and when we made the entire pedagogy to be experience-based, when we were not giving them readings, like I was never giving them readings, and I often tell them that don't ask me for readings. I have this very specific idea about readings, because I always say that famous writers, your famous authors are those who have a great skill to write. They are able to write their narrative with continuity. They understand their readers very well. And so they kind of, that is why more people buy them, because they make it for more people. Like Stephen Hawking said that when he was writing his book, he said that my people told me that if you use one equation, your leadership will go by half. So he said, I've used one equation, E is equal to MC square, and I know my leadership is already half. So those kind of understanding your audience and your reader is also very important. Actually, the problem for me with those kind of readings is that they are written so coherently that you immediately buy the idea. And you understand that if there is a problem which this author has tried to address, this is the best way to address that problem, and your mind stops working there.
It's all tied up neatly.
That's right. Very convincingly, a very convincing narrative we drive out of our thought, and that is why it become a bestseller. So those kind of, that it is because of that reason, that in the initial phases of classroom discussions, when a new batch will come, for 2-3 months, I don't want them to read anything. I say, let's talk, baat karte hain.
And share their ideas, what is in there.
Exactly. And especially the ideas of inclusion and having felt discriminated at any point of time or disadvantaged at any point of time is not new to any person. Everybody in their life would have had those kind of prepositions at one point or the other.
Even in the family order, if you're a first child or a second child.
Absolutely. You're treated differently. You have a different mandate in the family. Absolutely. So when they start talking about it, because see, why, and then somebody will ask that, why are you trying to do that? See, my idea is that if you want to practice inclusion, you have to understand your mindset. You have to readdress your belief system, because the exclusion is so deeply ingrained in the belief system that it just becomes a part of your thought. So if you don't start thinking about those minute things, everyday things in your life, you will not change.
And discuss also, no?
Discussion is important. Discussion is very important. So when people say a reflective teacher, I said, what do we want the teacher to reflect about? You know, a bit of physics comes in. That if you don't have a mirror, what will you reflect? How will you do? How will you study reflection? Right. So if you want to have that, you got to have an image to reflect upon, no? What are you reflecting upon? So let's start with self. If you are not good with self, you can start with somebody else also, right? If you want to talk about yourself, but you don't want to name it as you talk about this happened to somebody else. You don't have to identify yourself in the whole sequence. And this is what brings students to a discussion forum, where the idea is that you reflect upon your own belief systems. And the biggest challenge in this whole journey is how do you become non-judgmental? Because even when I'm talking about it, you know, and when the initial narratives will come, they'll come like, you know, so he did this or she did that or something like that. So the first kind of discussions that will come is where I identify myself as a disadvantaged person and I blame the people for my disadvantage, that my disadvantage is created because of their action. And then you have to convert that conversation to that your disadvantage is your feeling. When you start feeling disadvantaged, it's because you don't have resources to develop, you don't have developed resources to respond to their action. So it's not about them, what they are doing, it's about how you respond to their reaction. And that is where it becomes important. And every time we have to say this because, and connect it with the classroom situation.
And the courage to be themselves.
Precisely. And that is where the whole core value of rootedness and, you know, that kind of pride in your own self. Most of the people are not able to sustain in a system because they think that, you know, I'm not worthy of it. I may be questioned. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. You know, but then you gradually understand that you don't have to be good. You just have to be consistent.
And do what you are.
Absolutely.
You feel like doing.
Absolutely, sir. So I recently had this research scholar who came up and said that I can foresee problem in my research. She's a PhD scholar. I said, what is your problem that you foresee? She said, I think I don't write well. Okay, I think I get into grammatical errors. I think I don't know the language very well. So I said, you're done. She said, what do you mean? And she said, first of all, she said, that you really oversimplify things, you know, it's a genuine problem. I said, I agree with you that it's a genuine problem. You're going to be writing something like 250, 300 pages. It is a genuine problem. But do you even understand that you have understood the problem? Now at least you can work upon it. There is time for you to write your thesis. Now find out how will you develop the skill of writing. And then also understand how an academic writing is different from creative writing and you know, writing an assignment. So if you think that you've had certain issues, you need to learn that skill of converting your thoughts into language and then understand that how do I make my language proper. So, you know, these are the kind of nuances, very small things which students struggle with. And if they don't have somebody who they can come and talk about, they get in a preposition, they get stuck, they get non-responsive because they're not sure about their writing. But if somebody tells me, or whenever I get my scholars and I tell them, I know you don't know how to write. And there are senior scholars, they're teaching as college teachers, they're teaching in schools for long. There are English teachers who are teaching English. Even their dissertation writing is not great because academic writing is different than that kind of a writing. So, telling them that it's okay not to be perfect, I think it's a job of a teacher.
Yeah, and there's a path ahead.
Yeah, there's a path ahead. So that's where, things get a little different, a little diverted, and that's the kind of a pedagogy we are talking about. Be at ease with yourself, and be at ease with your students also, and be at ease with your subject also. These are the three things which are interacting in the classroom situation. So these are another level of struggles that we have when we deal on a regular basis with students. They're all coming after graduation, and technically after graduation they could have become an IAS person. Well, like they could have become a bank officer, they could have become anything. And they're coming for a teacher's job, and when they find those kind of inadequacies, we need to be very candid with them and tell them that this is what happens. Many a number of times I take them to my classrooms, that when I went as an intern, this happened. When I taught in the school for 4 years, this is how my first year happened, second year happened. So they understand that the growth is organic. That you are not there because you were the best. You are doing okay because you are learning every day, and yeah, so that helps.
You mentioned IDEC, the International Democratic Education Conference.
Yes.
What did you came there with your scholars and research scholars? What did the group get from there, in a sense? What I know what you contributed. You brought the whole thing alive, but what was your takeaway and the group's takeaway?
I think if I talk about me and all other 8 people who were there, one of the greatest takeaway was a very deeply rooted faith in children. We all talk about child center, and children are important, children construct their own knowledge. But that was one of the forums which grounded our faith in children, because we saw children in that environment behaving very differently. Like just after the inauguration, I was standing with some 2-3 people over there, and this girl just walks in. I think she was in grade 7 or 8, and she says, "So I'm so and so. What's your name?" All right. So this was amazing, right? Otherwise, so I don't say the children are not like that, but what I'm saying is our experience with children was revisited during that conference. So if you ask me about the greatest contribution, that's where I locate myself, and I think most of the people who are from the group would locate their kind of thing over there. We also learned that kind of conference. You know what conference means, India? So a conference can have students as participants. A conference can have different kind of stalls being put up, where you remember we had put up those stalls with Worley painting and things like that. And, we also learned about that children may be encouraged to fund for their expenses. This is one thing which is very immensely missing. We have big people money, 20 plus, 25 plus people fighting with their parents that you're not buying me this gadget, why you're not doing this. So at that is, I'm not saying that's the reality of the whole India, but that is one of the multiple realities of a relationship of children with their parents. I think that is where, the responsibility and the pride which they will take, that, okay, I'm going to be selling this and I'm going to take out my expenses for the other things. So, it was kind of, understanding economy in a different way. That was not a profit making kind of a thing. So the stalls were put up, but it was not for the purpose of profit making. Like usually in Delhi, it's a very popular culture. You'll put up stalls in all kind of fairs, and you make profits out of that. But that was sustainability. That I'm selling something, I'm doing some work to sustain my expenses. So I think these are the kind of things which were not popular. At least with me, I can say that for sure. I would also like to say that they are still not popular. So somewhere down the line, this whole idea of taking responsibility of self is very important.
For me also, at that time I remember talking to you how the children were looking at the program and going for attending
Right.
different sessions,
That's
choosing.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
You know, the entire idea, the entire conference was so organic. And you know, not only the program which was put up, you know, it was like during the program, there's a chart where, you know, we have put the day's program, this thing there, this thing there. Then somebody will say, I want to do this also. So they'll just go and write it over there, you know, 2 to 3, there is this activity also. So there was that openness that the kind of agenda for the day is not pre-decided. If something has come to your mind and you're like, let me just get me a venue. If there is no venue, I'll do it in the pandal, you know, or I'll do it in the gardens. That was a beautiful place where you can do, and time was also luckily very good. The weather was very good that you can do it outside also. So those kind of impromptu kind of things, you know, that also made the whole thing very, very natural and very participative.
And sometimes, you know, your research scholars also help to document,
Yeah.
you know.
That's always there, you know, because that was this idea of, you know, being present there and then contributing to the whole system, to the whole kind of event in a different manner. So, you know, whoever has can bring it on the table and they can say, okay, I can do this, I can do that. So understanding volunteering, because that is another lost kind of a, you know, tradition, as what I will say. That in my school time, I remember we used to volunteer a lot of things, you know. But now that is a lost tradition. People will say, why are you volunteering? You know, and then there is this narrative, somebody is using you because you are doing that kind of a thing and stuff like that. Are they paying you up for this or not? Oh, these people are making so much of money, are they paying you and stuff like that? So I don't know where that kind of a narrative has evolved, where that kind of cohesiveness and collectiveness is missing in the entire event or things like that. But I don't know, after IDEC or even before that, I've been, I've had a group of students, scholars, who always contributed, who just came in and who realized that, you know, even when they're doing registration, it's a learning experience. So converting everything to a learning experience, something which is very basic, you know. Even when you're looking at whether the lunch table is done properly, coordinating the time with the mess, you know, even that is a learning experience. So that kind of open-mindedness is what I think we have been able to create amongst people through course discussions. That, you know, every work has a worth. And every small piece adds to the success of a bigger event or to make an event bigger, you know. All those kind of values we have been able to generate. And there are students who come back who kind of make those kind of contributions.
And I'm still in touch with many of those scholars.
I'm sure.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
You talked about rootedness.
See, rootedness for me is how an individual will ground. What is my core self, you know, like earth has a core, you know, and the mental and the upper surface. So what is a core value which I'm holding? That is one part of rootedness. And where are they coming from? What are the people I connect with? What are the scenarios I connect with? And how strong my connection is, you know, that for me is rootedness, you know. And I have a lot of faith in the idea that you have to be grounded to be able to expand and grow and flourish, you know. In the case of plants, it is their roots, so I think probably the word comes from there only. But rootedness is often, I think, in the recent times, it is confused with being non-static, with being static, you know, that stagnant and static. You rooted means you're just being at one place and you're not trying to move around. So that is something which is a kind of a point which I always try to make, you know, whenever I'm in those kind of conversations. So rootedness for me is how I recognize idea of myself and where do I belong to, and what is my kind of, you know, how do I explain that to the world, and how much of the self-respect that identity has given to me, I give to myself, in fact, So everybody has a kind of a profile that I come from here, this is my place, birthplace, whatever, whatever, whatever. So we have a socio-demographic profile of ourselves. Does that add to my self-respect? Does that add to my self-pride? Is something which I will call as rootedness.
Not only self, no? Also society or...
Absolutely. But why I'm talking about self is because rootedness I'm looking at in a individualized perspective, that how I will call myself as rooted. So when I say self-esteem or self-respect, that is where I want the people to introspect that are they happy with their own identity? Because this idea of tokenism, if I say that I come from this, so the other person's reaction will be, okay, I already have a kind of a profile understanding about you. You come from here, you must be this, you must be this, you must be that, those kind of stuff. So that identity, do I get baffled? Like this boy whom I spoke about, this boy has come from Rajasthan and he just spoke in that, yeah. So he had a kind of a rootedness. That thing gave him a self-respect. He was not deterred by the people's response to his language. And he knew that he had to focus on his idea. That clarity that person had. Do more people have that kind of a clarity? Am I sure that I can be my regional self and be very contented in an environment where that regionality or my identity is in a less proportion? If I'm in a kind of populous place where a lot of people are like me with my identity, the struggle is different. But the moment I come to a forum where the place is more diverse, people have dropped in from different places, then what happens to my identity and my own self? That is where I brought in that idea of self.
Yeah. Because, and also you're rooted, the self is important.
Yeah.
But that rootedness also is in a context.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely so. And that is why I'm saying that I come with a socio-demographic profile. That context of mine, do I take pride in that? Or do I think that I have to change my practices? I have to say certain words and not say certain words because I have moved to a diverse context. And this diverse context probably requires me to behave in a certain manner.
To become like a melting pot.
Right.
Become melting pot rather than a collage.
Absolutely so. And I think that is a skill which people need to know, and especially in this point of time when we talk about the local context and the global context, it's a very unstabilizing kind of a preposition for a person to understand, for an individual to understand.
Also the difficulty is that one wants to think of this, if you have this, you can't be that.
Right.
Or if you are that, you can't be this. But there's a simultaneity to it, no?
Absolutely.
It can be this and that, not this or that.
That's right. Absolutely so. So there could be a professional requirement if I enter into some kind of work. Do I leave my personal identity behind and let the work camouflage me and start doing it like that? Or do I go to the work with the skills, thinking skills, the process skills which are required for the work, but I go as myself? I don't feel that burden of, changing myself for that particular place. It's something which is very, very critical for me to understand, because that is where this whole idea of acculturation comes in. That is where this whole idea of, whether I belong to my culture or I don't belong to that culture. When I went for my fellowship, I realized that people love Indian dresses. I mean, they love Indian food, they love Indian people, they love Hindi language because it's more popular. I'm not trying to say that there is another reason, but it's more popular. So they want to know, they want to know about Bollywood songs and because it's more popular. I'm not trying to say that within India we only promote that, no. So that's more popular, they love it, they want to know it, they want to dance, they want to celebrate Holi, they want to celebrate Diwali, they understand that. I'm not saying that they don't want to celebrate Eid. These are the kind of conflicting ideas that drop in when you start conversing in a particular manner. So probably, they know Eid more in context of, Arabic countries or things like that. So when one of our fellow Fulbrighter was from Egypt, we celebrated Eid together. We had those kind of things together. But when it comes to India, this is the kind of, depiction they have and they want to talk about. Maybe other part of India, they will have other things also, or other part of USA, they might know about other things also. I'm not trying to contest that.
Pongal.
That's right. Because there are a lot of communities who are living there, expat communities, they celebrate festivals and people love that. Fundamentally, I think what they love about India is the idea of a lot of colors, and then a lot of celebrations, a lot of light, and then, these are the kind of things. But so outside the world is looking at us in a very positive manner. What happens to us when we come back to India, When I come back to India, I say if somebody coming in and not speaking good, leave apart English. I'm talking about the North Belt because that's where I've lived most of my life. If somebody is not able to speak Hindi properly, we start laughing. So there's a kind of arrogance with regard to, I know this, you don't know that. All right. I think we need to work on that arrogance. When we are living in a country like India, we are so diverse. What is this arrogance all about? That, I speak Sanskritized Hindi and you can't speak that. I speak a good English, you can't speak that.
Swachh Hindi.
Swachh Hindi. I don't know if that's even a term. That's a term. Must be. So, these are the kind of places, where we got to work on people, we got to work with people, and we got to tell them it's okay, it's perfectly fine. People come from different. Actually, it's very interesting that if somebody comes from a foreign country and they speak their own language, we are like, wow. Yeah? And if somebody comes from North India to South of India, or South of India to North of India, or any other place, any part of India, and they speak a different language than that region, we are like, what? You don't know a language which everybody understands? This is so crazy. I don't understand this. I tell you a very interesting episode onto this. So I was working with this group of children, 3 children, and this is recent before I went, and they were given some project to work on in a digital medium or something like that. So we just got into language conversation. Very interesting kids, and we just got into this very interesting conversation, and they were like, we started talking about this. If the children, they were like, they were actually brainstorming on an idea which they can take ahead. So these children were like, what do we do? What do we do? And then I was like, there were children, do you have people coming in? Language came in as a part of diversity, and then they were like, okay. And they were like, okay, we can do something on language. So I said, when people migrate from one place to another, probably they don't know English language. So what will you do? These are all children who are studying in a private school. So they don't understand somebody who doesn't know English. Then somebody might drop into your school who doesn't know English, then what do we do?
What age group?
Grade 8. All of them. Grade 7 and 8. Like they were just moving on to that. Now they are in grade 9. So these kids are like, okay. And this guy just said that, Auntie, do you know about one thing? We have those kind of conference speakers, headphones. And I go, yeah. So he said, there are frequencies in it. And if you set it on one frequency, whatever is happening, they start translating it in that language, whichever the language the person. So there is a language which is set towards a particular frequency. So if you want to listen to any other language, you can set that up in that language and you can just go ahead with that. I said, yeah, I know, because I've attended a couple of conferences where this thing was available. I said, yeah, I know that. He said, why are we not using it in the schools? And, coming from a grade 7 child, I think it was an amazing thing to think about. And I don't think if we have places which are unresourced, but we don't think about resources in the manner that we resolve a problem. We think about creating more resources for bringing in some narratives from out of context places, and we say, if it has worked in that context, it will work in our context also. But there are such kind of solutions which from experiential learning, they will move over to this kind of a thing, and then, that could happen, that could really happen. And I think that was one idea which struck with me for long. I mean, it's still with me. Finally, these children created a kind of a app, grade 8. Okay, now they are in grade 8 and now they are in 9, but this is between 8 and 9. They created an app where they have listed, they were given a task to visit one of the inclusive institutions. So they again approached me that how can we do that? I said, you visit Amar Jyoti is a great place for you to understand. You will understand, for a beginner, that's a very good place to go. Okay, so they went to that place and they did that, and then I went off, I didn't know what they did. They came up with an app where they started consolidating resources for parents. He said this, if when people will start understand, when they approach this, they will understand what are the authentic resources for them if there is a child with special need in the family or things like that. And they just did that. It was a very small app they created and they sent me that, prototype, and we had a lot of discussion on that. I said, just make it big. People need this.
We can use it.
Yeah, everybody can use it. That's what. So, children have that potential to create a problem, to look at a problem in a different perspective and come up with a different kind of a solution to it. Are we giving those kind of, opportunities to children? Do we even look up at children as problem solvers?
And constructors.
Constructors. Absolutely.
Yeah. Shall we look at the aims of education? What are we here for?
So when we talk about aims, that is a very, again, a very diverse kind of a perspective, because aims of education can be different in different contexts, right? But I would like to say that what could be the purpose of education, And purpose of education should have both the dimensions. Preparing me for a livelihood, but also, preparing me as a person, helping me evolve as a person. So both these purposes should be there. I think from a long time, we often quote Macaulay minutes and those kind of things from where education has been used as creating, certain workforce kind of a thing. So, which I think is important. We are not saying that we should not prepare people, education should not prepare people for different kind of work or professions, whatever we want to call it. But I also think that education should give me that kind of groundedness. Again, I want to use the word that how I see myself in this world to be, and how reflecting am I, if I have resources, can I be rude? If I don't have resources, do I always have to be humble? There are these kind of connections which are made, and the connections which are reinforced in the classroom, reinforced through the textbooks, that a certain people will have to behave in a certain manner. Can we just kind of, merge those boundaries, blur, or I want to say merge, till we are able to do away with them, kind of a thing. So those kind of interconnectivity with people, how I connect myself to other people, what are the kind of opportunities which I give to other people to connect with myself. I think those are the kind of very interesting episodes that we need to, that should be the purpose of schooling also. I'm specifically talking about schooling, that we've often seen in primary schools the children just play with each other. They're very non-selective, they're very inclusive is the word I can use. They don't consider, we go to even younger age, they don't even consider gender. Girls and boys playing together, there's no, everybody who's from a sector, they're all playing together and they're just working on to that. As they grow in school system only, they start creating cliques of similar types. So this identify with that identify with that. Where the girls and boys can work with each other. Do we have people with different gender identities in the school? How do we respond to if there are people with different gender identities in the school? How do we, have we learned the life skill to be with each other, even with different gender identities?
So variety as such in the school
Absolutely.
of any kind.
Absolutely.
Maybe language, maybe gender, maybe socio-economic.
Absolutely so. Absolutely so. So that should also be one of the purpose of education when we talk about the purpose of education. I have this very if I'm saying it now, this will not be a very regular question, because people already know what they have to say. But whenever the students come to my classroom or I go to some place and I am like, okay, what do you see school as, and what is the age group which is present in the school? So most people will say, okay, what is the school like? So, the early childhood was not there earlier. So I was like, okay, the school is from grade 1 to grade 12. Now, what are the age groups you see in the school? And they say, ma'am, 6 to 18. Okay? So that focus when it comes to school, there's a 6 to 18. I said, no, 6 to 60. How do you forget teachers, the work staff, the other people in the school? You can't forget them out. So when you go to a school, you have that intergenerational interaction. How are we not able to inculcate those intergenerational respectful modes of communication with each other? School is a great place to do that. So it's not about the diversity amongst the students, it's also about diversity in the school with different regard. With the adults also, that intergenerational, that age-based arrogance which comes in people. Whether it is the new age kids who say that the older people don't know anything, or it is the older people who say that new people don't know anything. But that's a great place. 5 hours, 6 hours, you are together with each other. Let's learn to communicate. That communication is missing. Another hierarchy which a school can break is the hierarchy of subjects. How do we say that a science teacher or a science student is here, science, commerce and arts? How do we create those kind of conjectures? I don't understand that.
Also, now preschool, primary, elementary.
Absolutely.
Why should a high school teacher be paid more?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely so. Yeah. So I think some of these things have been attempted in NEP 2020 with the policy document and the National Mentor Mission, NPSG, the National Professional Standard for Teachers and things like that. So they're looking up a growth in verticals also, and PST is proposing a vertical growth also, because education is organized differently now. And if we are able to kind of implement it properly, we might have a different kind of system in years to come, where these, the horizontal hierarchies will be addressed. And I'll be very proud to say that I'm a primary teacher and, those kind of things. So that is what I meant, coming back to the idea of rootedness. I have a personal identity, I have a social identity, I have a professional identity. Am I able to kind of, weave a thread across all of them and evolve as a human being? That is something which has to, I think, which is the task of the school education.
Yeah. And for you to prepare the teachers for that.
Absolutely so. Yeah. Absolutely so. Absolutely so.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll stop here.
Yeah.